welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. Before I dive into today's show, I want to take a moment and first thank all my listeners kind of all around the world. I've been slowly tracking and watching listenership go up and looking at where people in the world kind of receive this from and take away from the show and download the show. So I want to welcome some new listeners in Europe. I want to say hello to my fans in Italy and Switzerland and Sweden and Israel, in some of the African continents, in Egypt and Nairobi and South Africa. I want to say hello to those in South America. I want to say thank you to all of you for these past couple of years who've been listening and helping this show grow and hopefully finding some really beneficial information here and getting something out of this experience, which going to lead me to today's show. Today's show, I try to go ahead and tackle some of the different fetishes that we have in our lifestyle, explain what we do, and there are some topics I have stayed away from. I think for the most part because I don't have a deep understanding of them. I don't know how they completely interact inside of the community, or they're just not my preference, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about them. And there's been some stuff coming up on social media that really caught my attention, so I started looking into it. There is some heavy psychology on the subject matter, which I'm going to go into, and so I decided today that I'm going to kind of sit down, fight back against what not wanting to do something and not bringing any biases, and come at this discussion very openly. So today, I'm going to take us through the intriguing world of adult nursing relationships, or ANR. Now, ANR may seem like uncharted territory to some, and it's really a realm veiled in mystery and taboo, but within its depths lie fascinating insights into the human psyche and the diverse ways we as people seek intimacy. Today, I really want to go through and unravel the layers of ANR a little bit. I want to explore the psychological, the cultural, and even some of the BDSM-related aspects of this. Now, my goal here is to kind of give a little bit of light to this misunderstood topic, and I want to offer a deeper understanding of its complexities and its implications for some. And by kind of exploring the psychological dynamics at play here, and examine the cultural perceptions and really kind of diving into the intersections with where ANR is and BDSM, I kind of hope to provide a little bit more of a comprehensive view, if you will, of ANR. So whether you've been in the kink world or part of the lifestyle for a long time, or you're just a happy traveler coming through and you're kind of discovering this for today, I really hope that you're going to find this show a little bit fascinating. Before I go into it, please, if this is the first time you're listening to me, like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Rate this show on 5 stars on Spotify. It helps me keep the show free for now. It grows the listenership. It gets the word out there. Allows more people to find it. Now, first, today, what I really want to do is I want to kind of go through a little bit of a definition and background. So, ANR here, or adult nursing relationships, it's really a unique form of intimacy where consenting adults engage in the act of breastfeeding. Now, while this concept may initially raise some eyebrows around some, looking at ANR in a different light, it's really deeply intimate, and it does have a rich history and diverse expressions. ANR holds significant meaning for those who engage in it, and it offers a profound connection that goes beyond the traditional notions of intimacy. It does tap into primal instincts associated with nurturing and attachment, and provides emotional fulfillment and closeness. The practice of adult breastfeeding isn't really entirely new either. It has a lot of roots in various cultures throughout history. From ancient civilizations to modern times, breastfeeding here was and has been revered as a sacred act, and its symbolism here is nourishment, love, and bonding. Now, the cultural context surrounding ANR has evolved over time, though, and that's shaped by changing attitudes towards sexuality and intimacy. In a contemporary society like we're in now, ANR relationships vary widely in their expression. Some participants view it as purely a physical act of bonding, others incorporate elements of eroticism or sexual pleasure. Now, unlike traditional breastfeeding, which primarily serves a purpose of nourishing infants, for example, ANR focuses on the fulfilling the emotion and intimate needs of consenting adults. And that's the world that separates us completely from anything else. Now, exploring the diversity of ANR relationships reveals this vast spectrum of practices and preferences. Some couples who engage in ANR, they do it as a way to enhance their emotional connection and their intimacy. Others incorporate it into their sexual repertoire. Each ANR relationship, though, is unique, and it reflects the desires and boundaries of the individuals that are involved. So that doesn't mean we necessarily are judging. We are understanding why here there's a little bit more connection. Now, unsurprisingly, there are some psychological dynamics of ANR here at play. Now, at its core, ANR is a deeply psychological experience. It taps into this primal emotion and desires associated with nurturing and attachment. Just as infants bond with their mothers through breastfeeding, adults in ANR seek similar feelings of closeness, security, and emotional fulfillment. Now, looking at attachment theory, this provides a valuable insight into the psychological dynamics of ANR. Now, according to this theory, our early experiences with caregivers shape our attachment styles and influence how we form our relationships later in life. ANR here can be seen as an extension of these early bonding experiences as individuals seek to recreate these feelings for safety, perhaps, or comfort through intimate acts of nurturing. For many participants that I reached out to, ANR fulfills profound emotional needs that may not be met through traditional forms of intimacy. It offers a sense of connection and belonging. It provides reassurance and support in times of stress and uncertainty. And unlike fleeting moments of pleasure, the emotional satisfaction derived from ANR can be profound and long-lasting. Now, one key element here in the psychological experience of ANR is the release of oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone. Now, oxytocin plays a crucial role in facilitating bonding and attachment, promoting feelings of trust, intimacy, and pleasure. During breastfeeding, both mothers and infants, for example, experience a surge of oxytocin. That deepens their emotional connection. Now, similarly, in adults and an ANR relationship, they might experience the same heightened levels of oxytocin, and this helps them foster feelings of bonding and pleasure during intimate moments or acts. Moreover, ANR provides a uniquely opportunistic way for partners to explore and express their deepest desires and vulnerabilities. It does require a high level of trust and communication, though, because, somebody opening themselves up to these intimate acts of vulnerability and care may not be the easiest thing to do, especially when we're talking about exploring our deeper erotic desires. But through this shared experience, couples can really strengthen their emotional bond and deepen their understanding of each other's needs and desires, for example. This kind of lends us over now to the intimacy and the eroticism of ANR. Now, ANR really is a complex interplay of intimacy and eroticism. It does offer people a unique blend of emotional connection and sexual pleasure for some. Now, while the act of breastfeeding itself isn't inherently intimate, it holds a significant erotic potential for many individuals. For many people who take part in this fetish, ANR goes beyond simple nurturing. It becomes a deeply erotic experience. Now, here, breastfeeding triggers the release, as I said, of oxytocin. And we know as this bonding hormone surges inside of us, it really amps our feelings of closeness and arousal. It enhances our overall intimacy of the experience. The thing is that the taboo nature of ANR adds this layer of excitement to the relationship. Society often views breastfeeding as purely maternal, so reserved solely for the nurturing of infants. But if we look at it through a different light, adults engaging in ANR breaking this taboo can be thrilling and arousing as well. The forbidden nature of the practice adds an element of excitement and risk and heightens arousal in making the experience even more intimate. But ANR can serve as this powerful tool for sexual intimacy between people. And this act of breastfeeding involves this closeness, the skin-to-skin contact, if you will, and the shared vulnerability, all which fosters these deeper connections and levels between partners in their foundations of trust. Many couples find that engaging in ANR strengthens their emotional bond and it increases their overall satisfaction within their relationship, especially on a sexual level. Now, it is important to recognize, though, that not everybody who engages in ANR does it for sexual reasons. For some, the primary motivation is the emotional connection and intimacy, and with any sexual aspect typically being secondary. But each ANR relationship is unique, and people who are engaged in it may have different boundaries and preferences regarding the sexualization of breastfeeding. And we are wrapped in a lifestyle where we consistently talk about consent, and so kind of crossing into this border was quite interesting, because then how do we wrap our heads around understanding consent and ANR? And I mean, it's not unlike any other fetishes we want to participate in, but it can be a little bit more difficult when we're looking for a partner to engage with, either the person you're going to breastfeed from, a woman you're going to breastfeed from, or the suckler, right? So we know that clear communication and consent here are paramount. They are essential to what's going on. We know this from the lifestyle itself. Because ANR involves deeply intimate acts, you're really looking to ensure that both people are on the same page. And this will kind of ensure that everything's going to be healthy and everybody's going to feel fulfilled moving forward. And we need to understand here, consent isn't about just saying yes to ANR. It's about the ongoing communication and understanding, and both people must agree on the boundaries and the level of intimacy involved. And this agreement should be revisited and reaffirmed, I would probably think, more regularly than not. This includes discussing not only the acts of breastfeeding itself, but also the frequency and duration, possibly any sexual aspects of the relationship itself, not unlike when we do or don't negotiate sexual acts inside of BDSM. And I've said this before, and I'm just going to make this note, and then I'm going to go past it. But BDSM and sex are not synonymous. Just because you're doing BDSM doesn't mean you're having sex. That needs to be negotiated. I'm not going to go into that anymore, because I've talked about that till I'm red in the face, and that's not going to change. However, when people are establishing the boundaries in an ANR relationship, it requires this very open and honest communication. Partners really need to feel comfortable discussing their desires, their concerns, what their limits, without fear or judgment. And this might involve setting specific guidelines for where and when the ANR occurs, as well as establishing signals or safe words to indicate whether either partner is uncomfortable or wants to stop. One common concern about ANR is the potential for it to lead to dependency or unhealthy power dynamics within the relationship. There are some who worry that the act of breastfeeding could foster an unhealthy reliance on one partner for emotional support or nurturing. It's important to recognize here, though, that dependency isn't inherent to ANR itself, rather that it's a potential risk that exists in any intimate relationship. Now, dependency can arise when one partner relies excessively on the other for emotional validation or support, and that leads to an imbalance of the power and control dynamics within the relationship itself. Now, if we take that and apply it in the context of ANR, this might manifest as one partner feeling unable to express their needs or desires outside of the breastfeeding dynamic, or feeling potentially or emotionally insecure without regular nursing sessions. To mitigate the risk here of dependency, it's really crucial for both partners to maintain a healthy level of independence and self-reliance outside of the ANR relationship. And this means fostering other sources of emotional support and validation, such as friendships, hobbies, or even personal goals. It also involves maintaining open communications about your feelings of dependency or insecurity within the ANR relationship itself, and then working to address them. Now, there is another common concern inside of the ANR relationships, and that's for the potential here to violate societal norms surrounding breastfeeding and intimacy. Some may worry that engaging in ANR blurs the lines here between parent-child roles, or that it perpetuates unhealthy attitudes towards women's bodies. However, it's important to remember that ANR is a consensual act between adults, and it's entirely separate from the nurturing bond between a parent and child. We just have to remember not to, especially if you're engaging with somebody who might have a young child that's still nursing, that you're not interfering between that bond. And I think that's really crucial to recognize. I'm not saying people are, but it's a risk to consider. And, we think about this, and when I kind of started thinking about this subject, and I thought about what it meant to myself, I thought about all the societal and cultural perceptions that are going to be kind of sitting around this. Now, when I looked at ANR, it really does challenge the societal norms surrounding sexuality. And it really addresses the intimacy that it has in profound ways. Now, some cultures view adult breastfeeding as taboo. Others see it as a naturally and deeply intimate expression of human connection, if you will. Understanding these cultural perspectives is really crucial here for appreciating the diversity of human relationships and promoting acceptance and understanding. Now, in many cultures, breastfeeding is primarily associated with, as I said before, with maternal care or nourishment for the infants. As a result, the idea of adults engaging in breastfeeding can be met with discomfort or, a lot of times, condemnation. The taboo surrounding ANR often stems from societal norms that dictate what is considered appropriate or acceptable behavior for adults. Now, I'm not saying if you are involved in ANR that you can't do it. Whatever you do, two consenting people do, you're free to do. But where a mother might breastfeed their child in public or cover up or do, I don't think you're going to want to be doing ANR in public. Because the one thing we need to remember about this world is we've consented to do these acts, but that doesn't mean others have consented to watch you do them. You claiming to be an exhibitionist doesn't free you from that cause. So we have to balance that, I think, quite a bit, because what I'm starting to see is people pushing their kinks into the public sphere, and we're pushing it on unconsenting people. Well, that's just as bad as all the other complaints that happen within our world, and if you don't want worse perceptions of who you are, then don't do things that are going to make the community look bad. When we do things in public, we are in essence representing the entire community. Now, it is essential to recognize that cultural attitudes towards ANR vary widely across a lot of different societies and communities. I found in some cultures, particularly those with a more relaxed attitudes towards sexuality and intimacy, ANRs and adult breastfeeding is seen as a natural extension of physical closeness and emotional bonding between partners. Some cultures view ANR as beautiful and intimate, and an expression of love and connection. They are free from the stigma or judgment associated with it in some places. Some societal norms play a significant role in shaping perceptions of ANR. Some cultures where sexuality is often shrouded in secrecy or shame or is meant to be behind closed doors, ANR can be seen as deviant or inappropriate. And societies that value open communication and acceptance of diverse sexual practice, ANR might be regarded here as with curiosity or even admiration. Highlighting the importance of cultural sensitivity and acceptance in ANR is kind of essential here for growing understanding and respect within that part of the community. Couples who engage in this act should be mindful of the cultural context in which they live and the potential reactions from their communities. You're not going to want to go to a church and start breastfeeding. And I'm sorry, if you're going to do that, that's going to be disrespectful, going to be wrong, and it's not appropriate. It's not about me kink shaming. It's about doing things that are right and wrong. Just like you're not going to rock up at a supermarket and have sex. If you do, you're going to go to jail, and you probably should. Because then, and probably even you need some psychological counseling at that point because there's some other issues going on. But we need to start breaking away from this I've got to be seen by other people. All right? But I don't want to, I'm digressing a little bit here. We need to understand that promoting culturally sensitive and acceptance of ANR involves challenging the stereotypes and the misconceptions about adult breastfeeding. And maybe if you know or have a friend inside of the community that's part of this, have a chat with them, understand why they do it, learn something new about this, our part of our community, and understand the consensual nature of these relationships with them. Break down some of those barriers and learn to be a little bit more open. You still may not get involved with it, but you could at least understand what draws them to it. And it might be something you try in the future. I mean, we never know as we get older how our kinks and our sexuality are going to change over time. Which is going to bring me to ANR and BDSM here. Now, we understand that BDSM primarily focuses on the power dynamics of a relationship and the role playing in sexual contexts or overt tones. ANR introduces a unique element here of nurturing and intimacy into the equation. Now, the connection here between ANR and BDSM lies in the exploration of power dynamics and control, often blurring the lines between traditional roles and challenging the typical roles inside of our lifestyle. In some ANR relationships within the BDSM community, participants who are involved that incorporate the dominant submissive roles into their breastfeeding experiences. The act of breastfeeding can become a means to exert control or nurturing depending on the dynamics established between the two people. For a submissive partner, for example, relinquishing control and submitting to their dominant counterparts, nurturing can evoke a profound sense of vulnerability and surrender. This vulnerability is a cornerstone, as we've talked about in BDSM dynamics, where trust is paramount, and the act of breastfeeding becomes a symbol of maternal care and nourishment. And it really does take on a new significance within the context of BDSM if we think about it. It becomes a deeply intimate act, a vulnerable act of submission. Now, conversely, the dominant partner assumes a position of power and authority, and they are dictating the terms and conditions of the breastfeeding experience. Now, the act of breastfeeding becomes a means of exerting control and dominance, kind of reinforces the power exchange within the BDSM relationship. And this control extends beyond the physical act itself, but influencing the submissive partner's emotional state and their sense of self. Pardon me. Now, blurring the lines between traditional roles within ANR and BDSM can have a profound psychological implication. Now, by assuming parental roles within a BDSM context, sorry about that, a lot of motorcycles this week. By assuming these parental type roles within our context here, some people may tap into this deep-seated psychological need and desire. For a submissive partner, for example, being nurtured and cared for by their dominant counterpart can fulfill a longing for acceptance or validation. The act of breastfeeding here provides that sense of belonging. It's kind of akin to the comfort of a parent's embrace. But this regression to a childlike state can evoke complex emotions, ranging from feelings of safety and contentment to vulnerability and dependency. Pardon me. Now, conversely, for the dominant partner, this nurturing caregiver can fulfill a desire for control and authority, like I mentioned before. This breastfeeding act becomes a means of asserting dominance and power over somebody else, and it really does solidify their position as a caretaker and provider within the relationship. This control extends beyond the physical act itself, and it influences the submissive partner's emotional state and part of their emotional well-being. But does, the blurring the lines here can look like where the dynamic's heading, What if the roles are reversed? What if it's a dominant who is now maybe wants to explore ANR with their submissive? And how the lines become crossed, and where do we go from here? How do those feelings, pardon me, when they surface, how do we handle and navigate those? And that's a really complex question. I know with a couple of people that I talked to that there are some dominants that that are involved in ANR with their submissives, and there is a temporary time and power balance shift when they are suckling from in that position. More metaphorically, not necessarily literally, or figuratively instead of literally. But it does really add a little bit more complexity to all of this. And there's a lot more to this than I'm going to be able to cover today. But it's really quite a little bit more fascinating if we remove the context of what our perceptions of it may be versus to what we can start to understand about it. And from the psychological dynamics here to all the cultural and societal expectations, ANR really does challenge the norms and expands our understanding of intimacy. It's not just about breastfeeding, it's really a profound, deeply intimate act between two people. Now, whether it's about fulfilling emotional needs or exploring eroticism or how they're going to connect it to BDSM, ANR offers a unique lens through which we can view the complexities of human relationships. And when we think about these things, let's remember that the importance of being open and honest, not only with ourselves and our partners about our desires, but those that we participate and surround ourselves with inside of this community. And, even for me, as I kind of looked through this and researched this, it was interesting enough to start understanding all of these things and getting a little bit of a deeper look at this world. Again, I'm only really scratching the surface here. So I think, if somebody would love to come and talk about it, I'm absolutely open to hosting somebody on and having a discussion and maybe going a little bit further on some of the things we talked about today. I want to leave you all kind of with a question, maybe for some of those of you who are exploring this world or are part of it and listen to the show. Have you ever considered how power dynamics and control play a role in the intimacy within the ANR or your BDSM relationships, and how they're combined? And how does that work for you? Now, I want to give you all a little bit of an update. It's a happy update. I had somebody reach out to me from the community, offered me some help with my book to do some editing, and I took her up on that help, and I want to say a big shout out to Carol for helping me she took care of the editing and all the lines and the headers and all the other stuff that they needed to get done that I just didn't have time to, and so she did me a really big favor, so thank you so much. I want you to know that I really appreciate it. That was a really nice kind of birthday gift for me. So with that said, the new print, actually the format has been accepted. May 1st, the print version will be available for you. So for those of you who've been asking me forever, I feel terrible, but it's now coming out May 1st this year. So next week, you'll be able to order a print version for those of you who like to hold something in your hand. The ebook is still available wherever you can get your ebooks. You can download it from there. If you are looking for a therapist that understands the lifestyle, if that focuses on trauma, relationships, and other aspects, please feel free to reach out to me at my own website, www.enhanced-mind.com. That's www.enhanced-mind mind.com. Sorry, I got to think about my own website sometimes, and words escape me by the end of the day. But let me know what you think about this episode today, what your thoughts are on ANR. I'm going to put this up on social media. Please reach out, give me your thoughts, answer the question. I'm going to post the question to Spotify. Please feel free to open up there. Love getting some responses back from the community. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay tuned.